All right, so where did we leave off? Japan has taken Manchuria and other parts of China. Spain fought a nasty civil war. The bad guy Francisco Franco won. Many people have died. Italy has taken Ethiopia and Albania. Germany broke the Treaty of Versailles by greatly increasing its military, fortifying the Rhineland, which is that border with France they were supposed to be proud of. They've taken Czechoslovakia and Austria, and they have a secret agreement with Russia to split Poland between them, although England has said that if Poland wants to go to war, then England will support them. Allies have complained, but they really haven't done much to stop these three very aggressive bad guys. The League of Nations has absolutely failed. They refuse to take action to stop war, even though their whole purpose was to prevent war. The Axis powers, the bad guys, start off doing very, very well. They're prepared for war and they're willing for war, and the Allies simply are not. So Hitler said he wanted that part of Poland, and so he just goes in and takes Poland on September 1st, 1939. He attacks with 1.7 million soldiers who rapidly enter the nation and sweep everything behind them. Now, Poland had actually a pretty good, pretty large military. Unfortunately, they are using old-fashioned tactics, and Hitler has a brand new tactic called Blitzkrieg, where he is going to ignore many of the fortifications and just bypass them and enter the capital city as quickly as he can. France and England demand that they stop. They refuse, and so France and England declare war just 2 days later. Poland fell in less than a month. How did this happen? Well, Hitler was a fan of a new type of strategy called Blitzkrieg, which means lightning war. Blitz is lightning, Krieg war. Lightning war meaning they're going to go very, very, very fast. Speed is the number one issue at stake here. To do that, his military is fully mechanized. First sends in the Luftwaffe, or the Air Force. These are Stuka dive bombers. They don't have very much bombs on them, but they're small, so they can go very, very quickly. And their strategy of bombing accurately is to climb high in the sky and then dive almost straight down and drop their bombs when they're right on top of the enemy target. So they're very accurate. They also have whistles in their wings, so when they come down, they just terrify everyone behind them. Now, Poland is, all of Europe is not that big. So the old-fashioned way of thinking is all fighting is going to be on the border, and then it might sway this way or that way. Well, airplanes can cross the entirety of Poland in minutes. And so he's going to send his Luftwaffe not right on border, but further into Poland, deep in Poland, and strike everywhere at once. So when the Luftwaffe takes out maybe the artillery emplacements, the forts, then come the tanks, panzer divisions. These tanks are way better than World War I tanks. World War I tanks had light cannons. They went 2 or 3 miles an hour, and they broke down all the time. Modern World War II tanks, much larger, much heavier equipment on them, big artillery guns, machine guns. They can go maybe 40 or 50 miles an hour across just about any terrain. So they go very quickly, and it's difficult to stop these. They have heavy armor. Only a well-placed grenade to the tracks maybe, or an artillery shell will take one of these out. They're impervious to small arms fire. So they're going to rush in, and they're going to split the Polish forces into many different groups so that they cannot work effectively together. And then finally come the infantry, but here's the point. The infantry are not walking anywhere. They're all in vehicles and trucks and motorcycles and sidecars. They are bustling down the road. No one's walking. In World War I, everyone sat around in trenches and the war went so slowly. Well, this time we don't want to repeat that. So Hitler is going to just as quickly as possible. And this works so well. He gets behind the enemy soldiers and splits up the different divisions of the Polish army. Now, the typical traditional way of thinking is you don't want enemy soldiers in your rear. So when you attack an enemy, you attack all up and down the border, and from the border push forward slowly. But Hitler says, forget that. Let's bypass many large sections of the Polish army and get behind them and go for the strategic places like airports and the cities that I can then take and destroy Polish supply lines and communication lines so that they can't communicate with one another. They aren't getting food and bullets, and they don't know where to go. They can't put up a good resistance because they're in tiny chunks separated by the German army. As Germany invades from one side, Russia invades from the other side, and they split the nation like they promised. Russia had been building military bases in the Baltic states. This is just north of here. You see Lithuania in the north. The Baltic states are Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. They also wanted to build military bases in Finland, but Finland refused. Finland is a tiny nation compared to Russia, with a tiny military compared to Russia, but they are not going to go down without a fight. And they did really put up an amazing fight. They had no chance of survival, but they did have a chance of slowing down the Russians. And they did an amazing job of slowing down. They're begging for allied help. France and England, help us, help us. At the same time, Russia is pretending that they have not invaded Finland. And they are telling the world that the Finnish are lying to make Russia look bad. There are reports of thousands of heavy bombers flying the skies over Finland, and the Finnish are saying, yeah, they're bombing us. And General Molotov says, no, we're dropping food and supplies on Finland. They're humanitarian bombers. So when the war gets going and they invade with the ground forces, the Finns invent this called the Molotov cocktail. Very simple to make. As the Finnish army is running out of supplies and grenades and things, even the civilians can grab a glass bottle, fill it up halfway with gasoline or something, put a little rag in it and light it on fire and throw it. This is called a Molotov cocktail, after the Russian General Molotov. They would make these and say, here, General, here's a cocktail to go with your dinner. Even though they had very little chance of survival, they slowed Russia down and exposed them to the world for who they really are. The Allies are completely unprepared for war. They did declare war on September 3. When I say the Allies right now, I'm just saying France and England. They declared war on September 3, and now they have to decide how to wage war. They do not have enough of a military to attack Germany or to defend Poland or Finland. They just can't help. So let's stop trading with them, I guess. Stop selling them gasoline and things. Hitler wanted to attack Scandinavia, just north, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. But they couldn't because it's getting too late. There's going to be snow on the ground very soon. And so they had to wait an entire winter. His momentum is slowing down. The soldiers joke that the Blitzkrieg has turned into a Sitzkrieg. Get it? It's not lightning war, it's sitting war. We're just sitting here waiting for the snow to thaw, waiting for summer to come. In April 1940, as soon as he possibly could, he attacked Denmark and Norway. Denmark falls immediately. They do not even try to fight. Norway could have put up more of a fight, but they were betrayed. One of their leaders, Vidkun Quisling, was actually very pro-Nazi. He was not the leader of Norway, he was a leader of Norway. And he made a deal with Hitler that he would arrange for Norway to fall. So he sent military targets, defense forces away from the coastline on drill. And he opened up many strategic territories, pretending that they had, better places to be. And he told Hitler exactly where his forces were and what forces were where they were and where they were not. So Hitler was able to come in and very easily take over the country in a much easier fight than it could have been. Even today in Europe, Quisling is code for traitor. Now, although these two nations did fall very quickly, for the rest of the war, they are going to put up a stiff resistance. In Denmark, there are many Jews there, and Hitler comes in and he's doing his nasty Holocaust thing. In preparation for the Holocaust, he needed to know who were Jewish citizens. So he passed a law saying all Jewish people need to wear this bright yellow star that says Jew on it. This yellow Star of David would have to be prominently displayed on their coats or on their clothes. Well, the king of Denmark was not racist, and he wanted to know how he could help his people, how he could help his Jewish citizens. And he thought and thought. And then one day he went out on public. He often went around the streets of Copenhagen on his horse and just took walks around the city. And the day after Hitler ordered all Jews to wear the Star of David, he put a Star of David on himself. Now, this is the blonde, blue-eyed Viking king who is going around town with the Star of David on his coat. And the citizens immediately get the idea. Most of the citizens of Denmark the next day are wearing the Jew Star of David on their clothes. And that was very effective. Nazis were not able to determine who were the Jews and who were not, and that saved thousands and thousands of lives. There's also a wonderful story about four Danish teenagers who fought against the Nazis. They were very young when the war started, but they wanted to do as much mischief as they could. So they started doing things like stealing road signs and stop signs, and even switching the names of roads around just to confuse the Nazis. And they would do that at night and get their screwdrivers out and take out the stop signs and then giggle about that. But as the war went on, they did more daring exploits. There was one day that they saw a Nazi at a typewriter in like coffee shop. This Nazi walked up, got up and walked away, and this guy quickly grabbed a typewriter and ran home with it. Typewriters were very expensive back then. For years, he and his buddies started writing up propaganda leaflets and distributing them around town, saying things like "Death to Hitler" and "Goebbels is a war criminal" and things like that. There was one time when these schoolboys are just walking along the street and they see a Nazi truck. In the back of the Nazi truck, there's a crate of grenades. So one of them makes a diversion, and a couple other guys grab the crate and they run away and they hide it. And then for weeks later, every once in a while, in the middle of the night, there will be a huge explosion, and they would have thrown a grenade at a Nazi car. Unoccupied, they didn't kill anyone. But the Nazi generals would have like really nice cars, like the equivalent of Ferraris and things like that. They're very, very proud of. So in the middle of the night, they would blow up. After they ran out of grenades, they would get gas cans to pour gasoline over vehicles and burn them in the middle of the night. And they kept on doing things like that. The Allies started dropping food and supplies and weapons and ammunition on Denmark, hoping that the resistance would get them. And the boys started gardens in their front yards, telling their parents it's just for a hobby. But underneath the gardens, they were burying weapons and supplies. Well, they got caught. I think the two that got caught were like 15 and 16 at the time. They'd been doing this for a couple of years. They got caught and they got thrown in jail, but the Nazis were like, they're just kids and they haven't actually killed anyone, so we're going to throw them in jail. Well, their friends smuggled in a hacksaw blade and they cut the bars of their windows and used a little bit of putty to seal them up again. And at night they would crawl out of their jail cell, go do some mischief, spray paint some graffiti, spread leaflets, and then in the morning they would sneak back in and putty up the bars and put them in place. Did that for another couple of years and were caught once more just before the war ended. And they were going to be shot, but the Germans had mercy on them and for whatever reason decided not to shoot them. It's pretty cool stories there. France is relying on their defenses to stop Germany from invading. Germany and France have a very small border here, as you can see. Most of France's eastern border is occupied with Belgium and Luxembourg, and only a little bit with Germany. After World War I, they were so scared of Germany attacking again that they spent millions, billions of dollars building forts all up and down the border between Germany and France, named after General Maginot. It's called the Maginot Line. 560 miles of the heaviest fortifications the world has ever seen. So when they do declare war on Hitler, they're hoping that this line of fortifications is going to buy them enough time to get ready for war. Here's a picture of some of the fortifications, heavy pillboxes with many feet of cement and concrete. You have cannons and machine guns pointing out. These pillboxes would be strong enough that you could get direct hits with bombs and shells, and they would still be okay. Not destroy them. Some of these were just insane. Look at how many stories deep this fortification is. It's in the side of a mountain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is like 8 stories of caves. There's heavy artillery, there's machine guns, there's tank barricades, there's barbed wire. Inside you have gyms, you have hospitals, you have a movie theater, a telephone bureau, you have subways inside these mountain caves. You have anti-aircraft guns. On the bottom left, you see their underground garages for tanks and airplanes so that they can do sorties and come back to safety. And they are all connected with one another through underground roads and railroads. This is amazing. There is no way Hitler's going to be able to attack these and win. Unfortunately, because their forts were so cool, they were very overconfident that they could withstand Germany this time. And they're pretty confident that Hitler will have to attack the Maginot Line because Belgium and Switzerland, Belgium in the north, Switzerland in the south, they're both neutral. So Hitler wouldn't dare invade a neutral territory just to win the war, would he? Well, Germany did in the last war. They invaded through Belgium. Why would they not invade through Belgium again? Well, because it's illegal. In the last war, Germany said their treaty with Belgium was merely a scrap of paper. Do you think Hitler is going to be more honorable than Kaiser Wilhelm? Forts are immobile. That is their biggest weakness. They are very, very strong, but they can't move. Hitler invented the Blitzkrieg, which is all about movement. Hitler's going to go around the Maginot Line. General Patton said fixed fortifications are a monument to the stupidity of man. Don't build a wall. People will go around it. They spent billions of dollars on these military forts that barely saw any action. By the way, much of the Maginot Line is still there. It's millions of tons of concrete. It's not like people just dismantled it after the war. You can go travel through farmers' fields. In fact, I've had students who vacationed in France, and they said you're just driving along the road, and all of a sudden you see this giant concrete pillbox on the side of the road. There's no guns inside anymore. Build the Maginot Line, they said. We won't go through the Ardennes, they said. There's a section of the French and German border called the Ardennes Forest. That's just heavy forest. And the French imagined that the forest is so heavy, there's no way you can get an entire army through there, right? The French and British had several thousand troops on the Belgian border. Their main defense was the Maginot Line, and they would hope that that would stop the Blitzkrieg right in its tracks. But on May 10, so just a few weeks after getting Norway and Hitler invaded the Low Countries, and it just takes him 2 weeks to take the Netherlands and Belgium. Just 2 weeks. They put up a great fight, but they just can't withstand Hitler at the height of his power. He also got through the Ardennes forest. His big tanks were able to do that. They were able to cut a path through the forest and just steamroll over anything. There were French reconnaissance planes who were flying over the Ardennes forest, looked down and thousands of tanks, and they raced back home and said, hey, there's tanks invading through the forest. And their superiors didn't believe them. Said, oh no, you must have been mistaken. There's no tanks in the Ardennes. Yes, there are. Ah, no, they're not. They just refused to believe. The Germans surround the French and English forces and push them to the ocean. And we have about 300,000 English soldiers trapped along the ocean. These are mostly infantrymen, and they're surrounded by a ton of tanks, so they really don't have any hope. The generals on the ground say, Hitler, let's push forward with our tanks and just decimate this army, and they'll all either die or surrender. Hitler says, I really love my panzer divisions. Let's save them for later on in the war, and let's send in the Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and just bomb them to smithereens until they surrender. Which, not a terrible idea, but luckily for the English, there's too much fog, and the general of the Air Force, Hermann Goering, says, well, we'll just wait till the fog clears. They're not going anywhere. Do you know how many boats it's going to take to evacuate 300,000 soldiers? That's going to be a lot of boats, a lot of trips. Well, after several days, a fleet shows up. The British Admiralty sends all its boats that they can muster, but these big battleships, they can't get anywhere near the coastline. It's not like Dunkirk has a huge port. They're on the beach, and these big boats are way off in the horizon. Maybe you could barely see some big boats. So they sent out a distress call to all of England saying, if you have a boat of any kind, small boat, bring it to Dunkirk and help with the rescue. So we have fishermen, we have rich people with yachts, we have ferries, we have all sorts of little boats. 800 small craft come to Dunkirk, and they're ferrying soldiers back and forth from the beach to the big cruisers, bringing them back home and then coming back. And after days of going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, finally do evacuate 300,000. It says 4/5 of the BEF saved. That's the British Expeditionary Forces. 4/5 of them are returned. And this is called a miracle because for most of this evacuation, they're getting very light attacks from the Germans because the Air Force is stalled because of the weather, and the tanks are told not to go forward. This is going to be the first big mistake that Hitler makes. in not relying on his soldiers. Hitler thinks that he knows everything, and he gives his officers very clear instructions, and they're not allowed to break them. So the tank officers say, "Hey, we have a chance to end the war right here. Let's attack." Hitler says, "No, no, no, no. Let the Air Force do it." People are so happy in England that they're able to pull off this evacuation, and Churchill says, "Wait a minute. This is a retreat. This is a defeat. This is a terrible defeat. Wars are not won by evacuating." Glad that it's not worse, but wars are not evacuating. Hitler then turns south to northern France, and Italy attacks southern France as well. Italy is hoping that they could claim extra territory from southern France after the war and increase their their holdings. The French government immediately falls. Their government is gone. Remember, a couple chapters ago, we were talking about how the French had, so many different governments. There's so many revolutions and riots, and they just keep on getting new governments. So that happens once again. Their government falls, and they get a quick provisional government led by Henri Pétain, guy up here on top, and there he is shaking hands with Hitler on the bottom. Hitler makes him surrender to Germany in the same railroad car as Germany surrendered World War I. Very poetic justice there. So France has surrendered in just 42 days. We've been in quarantine for longer than that. Before World War II started, France had the largest army in the world, and England had the largest navy in the world by far. And everyone's saying the dream team, France's army and Britain's navy, will win the day. No one can attack the dream team. And France fell in 42 days. So now we have Germany, Italy, and Japan against England. England is the only ally at this time. Russia is still somewhat friendly with Hitler, and America has not joined the war. Can England survive when France fell, Poland fell, Denmark, Norway, Finland fell? Everyone's fallen. The Netherlands and Belgium has fallen. Only England is left. Germany occupied northern France with their soldiers. They let southern France go, with Pétain being the basically German governor. And this blue free zone in this map is called Vichy France. They're allowed to have self-rule, but of course the Nazis are watching everything they're doing. England is, by the way, now surrounded. Of course, they do have water, but now the Germans are in the French coastline just south of England. They're also in Denmark and Norway. That's in their northern and eastern borders. That means that a naval or amphibious assault can come from any direction, and airplanes can come from any direction, north, east, or south. I guess not west, but almost any direction. And they can attack any town or city in England that they want to at a moment's notice. Even though France has officially surrendered and is out of the war, there are millions of young Frenchmen who are willing to fight. And so as many as can join the Free French Army. That is actually a rogue army. They're not controlled by any government. And here's Charles de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle is a famous general. He actually does become the Prime Minister of France after the war, and there's many statues of him all throughout Montreal, Canada, and in France. Very famous guy. There's also a famous French resistance. Plenty of civilians in France fight against the Nazis as much as they can, and they help an awful lot. They're spies. They get information to the Allies saying, where the German soldiers are. They cut telegraph and telephone cables. They even do drive-by shootings every once in a while. And there's so many stories about the French resistance. They actually did a lot better after they lost than before. Italy invaded North Africa. They invaded Egypt, which was owned by England at the time. And Egypt is critical because it has the Suez Canal that leads to the Middle East. And what's in the Middle East? Oil, gasoline for tanks, jet fuel for the airplanes. Everyone needs oil. How much oil is there in England? I don't think there is any. So if England's war machine is to keep on going, they need oil from the Middle East. And so Italy goes after that as a high priority target. Not only denying oil to the Allies, it's going to get oil for themselves, very necessary. The British go back and forth, but they do start winning after a little while, and they're able to capture 100,000 Italian soldiers. That is a huge victory for them. And they capture all the supplies. War material means tanks, trucks, tractors, guns, ammunition, airplanes, artillery, all sorts of good stuff that they can then use against their enemies. Italy begs for help, and Hitler says, I got you. I'm sending one of my best generals. This is General Erwin Rommel. He is actually a really cool guy. He's very smart, very good at his job, and he is one of the few people who actually stands up a little bit to Hitler. He is not as much of a war criminal as the rest of the Nazis are. He is very, very good at his job. He's called the Desert Fox because he's so good at his job, so wily and sneaky. He leads the famous German Africa Corps, and he pushes England back. He gets to Egypt by 1942 and is winning. The next time we'll see him in action is going to actually be D-Day. And here they are in early 1942. Black is everything controlled by the bad guys. Most of North Africa, a good chunk of Egypt too, although they're just showing whole nations in one color or the other. Almost all of Europe. Spain is friendly to them, but neutral. Almost all of Europe is owned by them. Only England is fighting against them. Look how much land Japan has gotten. And red is staying out of this war right now. Russia is not fighting against them. So right now we have England and its territories. Egypt, India, Australia, and New Zealand. China is resisting, but they are doing a terrible job. China just does not have the ability to fight back. India is a great help. They're sending tens of thousands of troops to Europe to fight with the British because they are part of the British Commonwealth. But yeah, it's Germany, Italy, Japan beating everyone. Who could possibly stop them? Well, I guess we'll have to find out next time.